This week on Brupeg, we stick our guest inside an oil tank. Yar, you sand for your freedom. I sensually rub my hand down a rib until I find a terrifying bit, and then drop a packet of sparkles inside the beautifully painted water tank. The paint, man! We're a Kiwi couple living in Australia who brought a 57-foot steel trawler after she sunk in a flood and was pulled from the sea. We're now bringing her back to life. We're on to the finishing jobs after working on her for the last 6 years to refit and get her ready for launch as soon as possible. Brupeg is rebuilt by us with volunteers funded by Patreons and viewers, and we spend every cent we have to make sure that she's ready. She's fueled by veggie oil, diesel, solar and wind power to do research, projects and expeditions to remote places like Antarctica and the Northwest Passage. She'll be crewed by supporters from around the world. Welcome aboard. 3 years ago we had these tanks completely sandblasted and we painted them with Jotun tank guard. It was a beautiful paint job. What we didn't realise is there was a couple of spots behind these ribs that had some rust on it. We didn't see it when we sandblasted it, and we certainly didn't see it when we painted over top of it. It's just not going to do inside a water tank. That's not going to last 5 minutes, so we have to get in there and either fix the rust or cut the rust out. And given that it's an angle rib rather than a flat bar, we simply can't get the sandblaster in there to be able to blast it properly, so we are cutting them off. Most boats these days are built with flat ribs like you can see here in the fuel tanks, so getting in there and chopping the flat part of the water tank rib off is not a structural issue, but it will solve the rust problem going forward. This is Stu dealing with some of the flaky paint that we have inside our fuel tank that we need to fix as well. While I get in there and plasma cut this rust out of the water tanks, Stu's in the fuel tanks with a wire wheel on a grinder, and he's attacking some flaky paint that I didn't prep right a couple of years ago when I painted this. So we're having another go at it just to make sure it's absolutely spot on when we start to fill this with oil. One of the issues with plasma cutting inside these tanks, the paint that we used is really thick and it burns off, creating a huge amount of smoke. These gas mask filters just don't last that long. It's pretty easy to push air into something, but it's quite difficult to suck air out of something. So we've got a 4-inch extractor fan set up, but when we're using filters to basically breathe in the atmosphere that eventually ends up in here, it's pretty feral. They block up pretty fast and they just don't last, and you end up with crap coming through into the mask and things like that. So we're trying something completely different. We're trying scuba. We don't have the ability to pipe clean oxygen into our masks. We've got fittings, but we don't have a compressor that would do it without putting oil into the airline. So we're going to be using scuba. It's a simple way to basically be breathing clean atmosphere no matter what. We're going to have the goggles on so that we don't have to get sore eyes with all of the smoke and everything that's generated. But at the same time, we're still extracting the smoke that will be generated, and which will be a lot. So we're burning off paint and steel. So it's pretty gross what ends up happening in here. Once we've done that, we've then got to do a bunch of grinding. The grinding is actually slightly easier on the masks than the plasma cutting. There's just not so much smoke. Even though you get a lot of dust and stuff, the grinding is just not as harsh on the mask. We'll be in here plasmaing, making a lot of smoke. Then we'll clean the plasma up with the grinder. We'll get in here with the needle gun probably, and we'll knock off all of the slag that the plasma creates. Last off, we'll throw the sandblaster in here and give everything a bit of a scuff up so we can paint it. And then we should be on to painting these tanks.
I might move my hand to your face. It's been a long and tiresome day. I've been waiting to come home and give you everything that I have. Now we could stay awake all night and have dinner in bed. Slowly watch as the sun rises. I'll fall asleep instead.
The guys threw everything at the tanks to get this done, and Dame found that these needle guns, he's never really liked them because they're always too weak, but this was strong enough. He was impressed.
There's a road that leads to pain. If we go down it, there's a chance we won't make it back. We better move positive side. There's a reason why we still have each other to hold. Now we could stay awake all night and have dinner in bed. Slowly watch as the sun rises, or fall asleep instead. Ooh, this is how.
We're having a lot of issues getting the sandblaster in and out of the tank. Like the physical size of the lance and everything was just a bit too much. So made a couple of adjustments. I shaved a few millimeters off what used to look like this. Now it looks like this. So it's quite a bit smaller. Basically I just shortened this piece here. I've tigged this piece onto the internal. I pulled all of this apart and tigged this piece onto this piece here. Just right in that gap there. I don't know if you could probably see it, but yeah, I've probably taken 1 meter out of length, and then rather than have obviously this ball valve up here somewhere where you can control it, and then have one of these reinforced pipes sort of snaking all the way down from the ball valve down to this here, 1 meter away, just put the whole thing together with solid fittings. So yeah, it seems to be quite snug and compact. I'll put a zip tie around there so that can't move, but I reckon that's going to be much easier to blast with now. As you might have seen last episode, this is the cofferdam access. This is how we get into our fuel and water tanks on Brupeg. Boat building really is a lesson in patience and repetition. We thought these tanks were going to be a fairly straightforward job. Climb inside, do a bit of cleanup, and we should be good to go. And we weren't even close. Pretty much every single rib needed some attention, and we can't leave any rust. We have to get this solved. If we don't get it solved, essentially the drinking water is compromised for every crew member, every mission going forward on Brupeg. So this is one job that we can't skimp on. This is just water blasting only, there's no sand at this stage. And this is with the sand on, so sand and water. It's a wee bit hard to tell in the footage, but this is cutting through about 2mm thick of paint straight down to bare steel. It's just amazing, this thing. So this is what the first cut looks like. We've roughed up the profile enough for the paint to hold on in all of the areas of bare steel, and the edges of the existing paint are feathered back enough that there won't be any paint flaking off. We've still got a fair bit of cleanup to do. You've got to get rid of all this discoloration, but we're definitely getting there. Part of getting these tanks finished is I need to get some sandblasting done. However, getting sand up onto the front deck of Brupeg is a bit of a mission when you're doing it manually. So I ripped the crane apart that's normally sitting up on the front deck there that we've used to lift our anchors around. I'm going to be mounting a 240 volt winch onto this thing so that I can just rip buckets of sand up and down real fast. Something to factor in is this is my lunchtime from my regular job. And I don't really want to get changed out of my good clothes, so we're going to call this business welding. My neighbour's taken over pretty much every available space to work, so we're going to be using this tiny little corner.
If you look at the line, it's totally on my side.
Keen viewers might remember this little winch. It used to hang on the rear roof of Brupeg and we'd lift things up and down onto the back deck. It's not very powerful. It was rated at 200 kgs and most of those have run away, so it's probably about a 50 kg winch at the moment, hence why we're not being overly graceful with our mounting. We're just going to hack this together and put it on. That crane at the front is not our permanent crane either. That's just a test rig to make sure that the idea worked.
What if I would tell you that things don't happen once, they always come back? What if I could throw us back to the very moment when
That's good enough to done.
suddenly
Time to get this thing up onto the bow.
you're all I ever wanted, can't you see? Got to follow through in a again.
Consider joining us on Patreon. We're a small channel and your support means we can keep making episodes and building this research and expedition boat. You'll be supporting real people you can talk to and be a part of something. And to our current Patreons, we feel honoured to have you with us. We're proud that you're part of this project. Thanks very much. Bowline, so it needs to be undone with your teeth. International rules of shipping.
Wind's coming up a bit.
Yeah.
We get a bit of weather soon.
Yeah.
Tell me, is this the permanent winch on this thing, or
No.
is this temporary?
This is a temporary winch. It's 240 volt. It's slapped together with some pretty robust welds. It's just got a bit of old Dyneema, like it's slapped together, but it's just so that we can get the sandblasting.
That's sand up.
Yeah. We've got to finish our sandblasting.
In a game for two, it ain't the way I want it. Got to follow through. Oh, oh, oh. Oh, oh, oh. It ain't the way I want it. Got to follow through. Oh, oh, oh. Oh, oh, oh. Should've got you when we started.
With the crane on and functioning, we can now get in, start sandblasting our tanks, because we can actually get sand up to the deck nice and easy.
Morning, early morning on the boat. We're getting some stuff downstairs into storage at Dame's old sailing pens. Little Moran has been to the vet for the second time. We saw a different vet for her check-up to find out more about her. And she has a couple of abscessed molars that have to come out, and the vet's not sure whether there'll be more to come out as well. Oh my goodness, so we've got to get her into surgery. It's not urgent, she's coping, but we need to do it as soon as we can, really. And we also discovered we were right about her back end. We thought that her back was damaged, but it looks like it's her right hip. There's something going on there, so she's in quite a lot of pain with her hip, and that's partly why she's so grumpy. She's spayed, and she's now microchipped and vaccinated, so we're getting on top of things, but it's a big cost. Thousands of dollars, and a lot of stress for her, but I think she'll handle it. She's doing really well inside. Taking a little morning tour. It's quite early morning, we're all finally up. We used the scuba gear in the tanks, that worked great. We're putting a new vent up on the deck, and we had to buy a new Mac. Oh my goodness, $4,000. All the second-hand ones we keep trying to buy just weren't cutting the amount of power we need to do our edits, and it's really us committing to doing documentaries and ongoing engineering episodes and things like that, so it's a pretty exciting moment for us. We're going to pay it off over time. And here's Dame doing his morning ritual, organising sand. We do a lot of sandblasting at this point of the build, coming up to the end. So he puts it in the sieve and it goes up on deck to do the tanks. And Renko, the guys worked so hard yesterday, almost ready to paint. Everyone's pretty tired this morning, achy, a bit slow getting out of bed for all of us. This is the second stainless medical cabinet. This is going in the engine bay. The first one went in the galley.
Yeah, there you go.
This one's ready.
That one's 2B filtered.
2B filtered, yeah, you can see some of the bigger stones.
Look at that.
Morning.
Morning, how are you?
Good.
Yeah, wet. It's all wet down the bottom.
Yeah. Damn. We had a bit of rain last night or not?
I don't know. It
Forecast,
must
but
have come from the bottom. It
Doesn't look like it.
You got to keep.
Got another skip. When we sandblast, the paint ends up on the ground underneath the boat, and then we've got to get rid of it because that can't stay on the yard. So we have to rent this. It's not too expensive, luckily. It's a small town and they have good prices for renting something like this. We half fill it because it's pretty weighty. They can lift about half full, just a bit over half full, and they take it away. We don't want to end up with a huge amount at the last month of work because we'll be run off our feet just trying to get registration done, insurance sorted, all of that. Final jobs, final checks. There's a lot to do, all the little jobs and big jobs. Here's Dame's using his crane for the first time with the winch. And Stu's washing machine innards.
Innards.
It's great, isn't
bloody
it?
awesome. Such a brilliant idea.
Oh, I love stainless chain. What is it about stainless chain? It's so shiny. Might not see it on the episode, so this is sort of what it's like in the background. There's always blasting getting done, sandblasting. This is our scrap pile, which is slowly growing again as we're doing new jobs and finishing on old jobs. Love my boat, love my boat. It's a lot easier.
God, yes.
So of course, if you don't know Brupeg very well, we're going to have 3 cranes, maybe even more at some point, depending on projects. But we have 3 cranes, one really strong crane up on the wheelhouse that'll be lifting our expedition dinghy, which will be a very heavy, powerful dinghy. That's the jet motored dinghy. We're putting a jet ski motor in that one. We're thinking that might be one of the first projects we do with Adrian and Stu as we go down the coast actually. We're in Queensland and they're in New South Wales. They're just around Sydney. So we'll be going down that way, heading south, making our way slowly down to Antarctica, doing projects on the way, stopping and catching up with everyone on the way. This is how we're accessing the tanks down these hatches. This is the front cabin.
I've said it many times, I know I would change my ways, I know for sure. When all the crows decide to leave,
Right, next bucket.
they settle down beneath my feet. I've got it right and I got it wrong, but I learned my lesson hanging on. Come sit here with me.
It's an endless process of moving sand, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it saves us thousands and thousands of dollars.
We would have spent probably 30 grand on sand alone if we were to buy garnet.
Yeah,
We've probably spent maybe 500 bucks, I reckon, over 6 years.
yeah. It's a lot of work, but we've had to do it this way.
Yeah.
And it means wherever we go in the world, when we need to blast something, we can.
Yeah.
There's sand everywhere, so
You have a beach, I have a sandblaster.
When I was young, I thought control.
those of you who don't know, this is an upcoming episode. We have to take this off and get it into a shop because there's a crack in the base, a little fracture that we didn't know about when we put it on. So we've got to get that sorted out. We're hoping we can get that sealed up. We've had some ideas about that, but yeah, you'll see that taken apart. And the stainless shaft is bent. And this is too old. We need to get it redone. So there's a wee bit to get the anchor system finished off. Oh, brain injury update. For anyone who doesn't know, this is what fell on my head. It's pretty heavy and it fell from a height and then it landed on my head here. We've been updating everyone to keep them in the loop about what's happening. We went down and I saw the neurologist for the first time and diagnosed with post-concussion syndrome. So it's a little bit worse than a normal concussion, but of course with my connective tissue disorder, tissues just don't heal that fast, so I was kind of expecting a bit of a complication. But I do have blackouts or amnesia with it, which is a little bit more, so I'm going for more tests and they'll figure it out. But I'm doing well, I'm just slow. And I have to be really careful with my coordination and things like that, and doing everything I can to make sure I do not hit my head again, because this is my 4th moderate brain injury, and that's not good. The brain does not sustain those very well. So thanks for all your lovely thoughts, guys, and we'll keep you updated, but I'm doing okay. But what I really want to talk to you about is there's been a lot of apprehension about using acrylic for the hatch covers for the water tanks inside Brupeg, and rightly so. It's certainly weaker than steel, mild steel. But there's some things that we didn't talk about in the last episode. When Damien went and got these, he talked to the specialist, and they went through all the variables. They looked at the loading, everything, and this is what the specialist said would work. One of the major concerns the specialist talked to us about was any cracks on the edges. That's where the weaknesses start. So he explained to Dame how to do it, how to cut it so that you don't get those cracks and those weaknesses. But also we think that we need to put something over it, so not have bolts sitting on the acrylic. To deal with this cracking issue and the potential weakness, what we've decided to do is put a rim of steel over it through which the bolts will be attached. So we're actually going to cut the old hatch out because it's perfectly aligned with the bolts for the bolt pattern. So we'll cut, and we're going to place that on top. Now we're going to have rubber between the tank and the acrylic. We're going to have 3mm nitrile rubber gasket, basically, and we're going to do one on between the acrylic and the rim as well. So at no point will the acrylic be touching steel, which we think is going to be a good thing. And Dame's going to use the technique, he'll show you next episode what technique he uses to cut this out so that we don't get that cracking on the corners and the edges and things like that. There was a suggestion to keep this old hatch cover as a backup. In an emergency, if this does fail, the water goes into the cofferdam, and we can pump that out. So we're not worried about a water tank leaking into there. That's what it's designed for. But we can easily just design up and cut another one of these on board any time to replace this. So we're not worried, we don't need to hold on to this. I'd much rather use the original bolt pattern on this because it's done, we know that it's perfect, and that just saves us a lot of work right now, and that means we can get in the water faster. That's our solution. Thanks for all your ideas, it was brilliant. So what next? The next episode, by the end of next episode, we'll have the spot blasting that we need to do in the tanks, the 4 tanks at the front are finished. We'll have the paint on all the tanks, and we'll have the hatches on, so that's including 2 acrylic hatches for the 2 water tanks. And we think probably Renko might be painted. See you next week.
This job turned into a significantly bigger job than we thought. But again, we don't have a choice, it has to be right. So we're going to get in here, blast off this paint. You can see here with sand, we're scuffing the paint so that we can have a nice profile ready to put new paint over top. We'll get this done, and we'll see you next week. Thanks for watching.